Mel Brooks. Just saying the name brings up a myriad of comedy classics. Young Frankenstein, Blazing Saddles, Silent Movie, Spaceballs, and even if you're Gen Y like me, Robin Hood Men in Tights was a frequent VHS rental on a Saturday night growing up, and a constant source of quotes in school as a kid. Hey, I bet! I hate that guy. Well, 1 year after Robin Hood Men in Tights came out, Brooks teamed up with acting legend Leslie Nielsen for what would ultimately be his final film as director. This is 1995's Dracula, Dead and Loving It. On the heels of Robin Hood in 1994, Brooks' recent offerings were, according to many critics at the time, getting a bit stale, and that Brooks was a bit past his prime. Robin Hood, although a bit of a critical disappointment, was a moderate box office hit, grossing $67 million on a $20 million budget, and going on to be a massive success on home video. Unfortunately, that moderate success did not repeat itself for Dracula Dead and Loving It, with the film opening at number 10 at the US box office, ultimately grossing just under $11 million in its whole run. It found some success on home video rentals throughout the years, but it's a really hard film to find these days. It has never garnered an Aussie DVD release. I just happened to come across my copy in Vancouver, Canada back in 2009 at a Future Shop Boxing Day sale. Since then, I'm sure it's been viewed over 100 times, to the point where I can quite annoyingly quote the entire film. I can't express how much I love this film, and I absolutely adore introducing my friends to it. I get a kick out of it every time I watch it, and I honestly believe it to be Mel Brooks' most underrated film ever. The current 11% tomato meter does not do this comedy classic justice, in my opinion. A really stellar cast rounds out the film. One of the funniest running gags in Dracula is that the cast are all Americans and Canadians, with Nielsen doing a spot-on imitation of Bela Lugosi's Hungarian accent, and the remainder of the cast doing very exaggerated British accents, with Brooks Van Helsing a very over-the-top German. So even if there's not a punchline being set up, just these over-the-top accents are hilariously performed by the actors throughout the film, and are the source of many very amusing moments. Nielsen is perfect, playing it relatively straight with a few pratfalls here and there, but as mentioned, channeling Bela Lugosi with gusto and razor-sharp accuracy. Brooks' regular, Harvey Korman, delivers all his dialogue with excellent timing. His scene with Renfield eating the bugs is not only the funniest scene in the movie, but also one of the funniest scenes in any Mel Brooks film. Despite my undying love for Leslie Nielsen, it's actually Peter MacNicol who is the MVP of Dracula Dead and Loving It. His performance is both a physical and dialogue-based marvel as Renfield. He puts so much energy and hilarity into his portrayal and basically steals the movie. The scene where two of Dracula's mistresses approach him in his bedroom and he says the line, "My God, what are you doing to the furniture?" is one of the funniest bits of the movie as well, and a really hilarious scene. We then have Amy Yazbek as Mina and Stephen Weather as Jonathan. The scene after Mina has been bitten and tries to seduce Jonathan is also a hilarious highlight of the movie and is performed really well by the two actors. It's also great to see Brooks' wife, Anne Bancroft, in a short but funny cameo as a villager who pinches her throat to sound ominous and echoey when warning Renfield of the lurking danger. Brooks himself also has a lot of fun with the character of Van Helsing. The scene with Stephen Weather and Van Helsing at Lucy's tomb is a hilarious moment. Mel Brooks didn't tell Stephen Weather actually how much blood there was going to be spraying at his face in that scene, and you could definitely tell by the reaction on Weather's face that he wasn't really prepared for it. But they both play it off really well, and it turns out to be one of the greatest scenes in the movie. Brooks and Leslie Nielsen also have this great comedic chemistry in the film. There's a scene where they're firing these ancient Moldovan insults at each other, and it's quite hilarious. Besides the hilarious comedic moments Brooks and the cast inject into Dracula, the design and aesthetic of the film should also be commended. Like Young Frankenstein years earlier, Brooks set out not only to make a parody, but also a respectful homage to the original films and the source material. The design of the scenes like Jonathan in the graveyard or the climax at the castle are beautiful looking scenes. Meticulous detail has gone into the production, both in the sets and the costumes, and really complements the comedy. A sure sign also that Brooks took his comedy well seriously. I think a big part of Dracula's initial failure in 1995 had a lot to do with the influx of parody films at the time, a genre that at a certain point in time Mel Brooks was pioneering. With the Zucker Abrahams films of the 80s and 90s like Top Secret, the Naked Gun trilogy and Hot Shots 1 and 2, and Brooks' own Spaceballs and Robin Hood Men in Tights, along with other less successful films like Repossessed, audiences and critics were likely worn out by an overabundance of parodies at the cinema. Particularly, and I say this quite sadly as he's my idol, but Leslie Nielsen starring parodies. There was quite a lot at the time. In fact, parody films fizzled out pretty fast after Dracula, not gaining mainstream popularity again until the Wayans brothers had a huge hit with Scary Movie in the year 2000, before once again fizzling out in the late 2000s after a cavalcade of terrible parody films directed by Aaron Salzer and Jason Friedberg. When you compare Dracula Dead and Loving It with any of those Friedberg-Salzer films, it looks downright brilliant by comparison, and you could definitely see the sheer brilliance of Mel Brooks and his talent for comedy and filmmaking. In this regard, Dracula Dead and Loving It has aged extremely well over the years, and I'm certain that if it released today, it would be much more appreciated and embraced by audiences and critics. I'm hoping that Australia gets a DVD Blu-ray release, or at the very least gets it on a streaming service, so more people can discover this great film and a great swan song for Mel Brooks. Until then, I will continue in my mission to make sure that everyone I meet is aware of its awesomeness. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you have access to this film, go out and watch it if you're a Leslie Nielsen fan, Mel Brooks fan, parody fan. Yeah, it's a really good, underrated film from the 90s and really needs to be rediscovered, I think, in 2021. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe for more content from Road to Nowhere Films. Then until next time, out!